as we hear the decision from the Supreme Court entering into reversal of Section 2 within the Voting Rights Act to end racial gerrymandering. And then we'll talk about the leading up to the midterms and how the pressure is being added on this Trump administration to end the Iran conflict, some disputes there, and then some breaking news as far as some of the discussions that have come out this morning and where the Trump administration is with economic sanctions and things there. And so we want to talk about these and how can we pray, how we're needed to pray for this administration and those who it affects leading up to the current primaries, leading up to the midterms. So we'll discuss all this and more on today's Pipeline Report. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Today, joined with Pastor Tim from his home studio. And bring him in here real quick. We have quite a few things, important things that had broke last week that now affect the midterms in a positive way. And there are polls that are showing varying degrees of effects depending on who you're listening to and what polls you're looking at. But the most important thing that came down last week was in a decision whether to allow, in the case of Louisiana, racial gerrymandering per Section 2 from the Voting Rights Act of 1964. The Supreme Court said that you can't do that, basically. So the maps that we had, where you had the second minority district drawn through the middle of the state, and other states, as Illinois has their lowercase c, Pennsylvania, Florida, Missouri, and Texas, and other states who are all affected now, and Alabama have the effect and the decision to, and this is really the ultimate decision, is do they wait till after the midterms and really take effect into the 2028 election, or do they try to, in Louisiana's case, pause the primaries, go to the midterm election, having basically an open election, and those are the decisions. They are the two of whether to wait or to be active now. You've kind of been plugged in here in Louisiana, talk about kind of the decision where we're at on that here in this state, and where Landry's made the decision to say, well, we're going to try to do this congressionally on those maps because those are the ones that it really affects, and get this done before the midterms to possibly redraw these maps.
And we kind of got a mess here in Louisiana, and it's setting the stage for the entire country as well. Our history is, and this is why the case came up for Supreme Court last week, we were redistricting anyway because we lost population. We lost actually a congressional seat, and we had to redistrict because of that. And in the midst of it, the House drew maps, and the courts rejected those maps and said there was not representation for minority. Okay, enough representation for the minorities in the state, which is against civil rights laws. America's allowed that for many years because of the injustices to the African-American community. And it was kind of like turned away. We knew it was unconstitutional, but we did it anyway because we were trying to be fair and give them, opportunity to have seats. That's kind of how that came about. Well, when the courts ruled that, our governor at that time, still is our governor, Jeff Landry, chose to redraw the district himself, got in his office and a pencil and pen, and with a few people helping him to mark out where the minorities lived in that district, and created this semi-diagonal line from where we live in Shreveport to Baton Rouge area, and a real narrow, literally turning on streets, and to make sure that you didn't include a Republican street versus a Democrat street, a black, African-American and white community, and they drew this map out and created a district, which a guy named Cleo Fields became our congressman in that district. In my city, I'm in Mike Johnson's district. 1 block away is that district. Matter of fact, our church is in that district. So this is what kind of happened. Well, by law, it got ruled unconstitutional. So now we're going back to the House redrawing the maps, which a court could step in again. So we were voting starting Saturday in our election, early voting for these seats. Well, he just abandoned that district because of the ruling. Well, we had all the other districts were up, which means they're all going to be redrawn. By the time November comes, they're going to be redrawn, which affects so many people. So now you're going to have this district go away, which was the 6th district. It goes away, and you're going to create, another district, which there may not even be any candidates for yet. So this is why I say it's chaos here. And this is going to happen in other states. I want to lay this out for you because this is not going to just happen in Louisiana only. And we'll play a clip here of a congressman talking about Alabama, Tennessee, some other states, Florida. They're going to play part in this as well. So it's going to get wild between now and then. So the governor banned the election for the Congress at this time. Now we're having the Senate election as well. Cassidy is our senator. And there's right now he could get pushed out during the runoff. Now, what's the weird thing about this is we were having our first year of having primaries where you had a Republican primary and a Democrat primary. We've always had what they call jungle primaries where everybody just voted, didn't matter what party you were in. And now that went out the window because of this ruling. And from what I'm reading, it appears it's still being fought over. You're going to find there's that district Zach just put up for you. That's what it looks like. And now it's gone. It's completely gone. The governor has ruled it unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court has to as well. So it's gone now.
Yeah.
So come now November, we're going to have an election for these other 6 districts now because they're all going to change. There's going to be boundaries that change, and they're going to change. And because there was no primary, they're saying that they're going to actually allow a jungle primaries in each of those districts, and whoever gets the most votes will win, regardless if they get 50% or not. So you talk about court challenges everywhere is going to happen. So we have a bit of chaos, and this is very important because some of you live in these other states, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, some of these other states that are contemplating doing the same thing where gerrymandering occurred based on race. And this is a battle. Now, let me play this clip here from Newsmax. Let me pull this up of them talking about congressmen talking about this issue.
This new congressional map, a plan that could deliver up to 4 additional seats to Republicans in the midterms. Republican Congressman Mike Herodopoulos of Florida joins us now live. So the new map, Congressman, could deliver 4 more Republican seats. How big of a game changer is not just this map, but that Supreme Court decision for Republicans moving forward?
Well, I think it's a fantastic win for Republicans. But the good news is we follow the law. As you know, Mark and Charla, in Florida, we follow the law. And if you look at our map, unlike the maps in, let's say, Virginia or in states like Illinois, ours look logical. They're not these crazy Rorschach tests that take place. They're actually keeping counties and cities together and representing the changes that happened in Florida. Remember when Ron DeSantis was first elected governor almost 8 years ago, there were 400,000 more registered Democrats. Today, there are 1.5 million more registered Republicans. And so this map represents what's really happening in the Sunshine State.
And we know that the Supreme Court just struck a major blow against race-based map drawing. Does that finally put an end to Democrats' attempts to gerrymander through the courts, not just in Florida, but really the whole South?
I think you're exactly right. You're looking at the new potential map. We need to move away from race.
Now look at this map here. On the left, you can see what it is now, and then on the right, with the new law and changing of these districts. So you're talking about Mississippi, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, all these states. Predictions are anywhere from 6 to 12 seats could be added to the Republicans in this. Let him continue here.
Of course, Barack Obama was elected president back in 2008. America has moved on. We need to draw maps based on the realities of a state. And that's exactly what's going to happen, I believe, in the near future. And the Supreme Court has affirmed this. I think it'll probably mean a big win for Republicans. And it kind of represents what we've all seen for years in the map when we run for president, when so many counties go for Republicans, but those huge urban areas are where Democrats run up big majorities. And so when you draw maps, of course, you want to keep them tighter together. It means that Democrats are not going to do as well as Republicans. And I think that this is going to be a big win for conservatives, but most importantly, for fairness in districts, unlike what we saw, again, in states like Virginia just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
right. Fairness. Why don't you speak to that, Zach? That's the
go
big
back,
issue.
if you could, go back in that video to where it shows the whole map. So somebody puts in here about on Rumble about Virginia. So this ruling from the Supreme Court basically null and voids the Virginia decision that just went through, which it's still going to have to be heard in court, but it was unconstitutional as is on its ground. But this basically just takes that away altogether. And in Louisiana's instance, I know you mentioned it, but the reason it went to the Supreme Court is because the people in Louisiana challenged a federal court ruling that said Louisiana had to redraw this based upon racial lines. And so that's why Louisiana did it in the first place. And so the Supreme Court saying this really clarifies the question that we've been talking about and waiting for the Supreme Court to rule upon. And it was a very strong decision coming out of the Supreme Court. And so here you see the map here. You look at Virginia. It was the way the old map that they just, quote unquote, voted for, put the most of it in the populace under Democratic control. You had people in rural areas who would more than likely vote certain way, forced to have a representative that opposed their views. Whereas now this ruling and the new map, if it were to go into effect before the midterms, puts things obviously back in their favor where they actually have representation. And the kind of count that you see is Texas, if they redraw their maps, they can gain up to 5 seats depending on how people vote. It's leaning for Florida up to 4 seats. There's also, if I can show this.
While you're looking for that, let me say this as well. There's a big scream now that President Obama did it, and others, black leaders have said this, that now the blacks have lost, African Americans have lost their civil right to vote. That is not true. They're going to the voting booth and they're not going to say you can't vote because you're African American. That's not true. There's a misleading of information coming out. Now, obviously, they're going to have to work within their districts to get more votes from within their contingency. But here's the fact. There are many black African American congressional and senator leaders who win in predominantly white districts. You can do it, but you have to align with the values of the people within that state. And that is what McDonald's done. That's what Tim Scott's done. There's been other guys that have done it because they do it the right way. And I think this is where the narrative has to shift within that community. The reason you're losing is not because of your color of skin, most likely. It's because of your political views. And that is your views are not going to fit in those districts. You've got to agree with that. A representative, a U.S. representative, is responsible to vote. They're representing the people within their districts. They're responsible to vote according to what the views are in their community. Now, a senator doesn't have to do that, but a congressman or congresswoman does. That's what they're put in there, taxation. We pay the taxes so that we can be represented, and that congressman, man or woman, should represent me and my district and the views of my district. And therein lies the problem, is because they're not representing the views of the state. So they notch it out so they can stay within those contingencies of the Democratic Party, because they won't win if they have to fight views of the people. Okay, I want to say this, and I want Zach to show this map. But these are states, let me list them here: Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Mexico, Rhode Island, Vermont, Hawaii, Delaware, and New Hampshire. Within all those states, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 states, they have no Republican congressmen or women. And yet within those states, the numbers go from anywhere from 35 to almost 46, 47% of Republicans are in those states. Because of gerrymandering in those states, the people that have our views, the most of them that have our views, do not have representation. They're paying taxes, but they do not get representation because of gerrymandering. And so that's why this is such a huge battle. If we're going to be fair in America, and I think that's what that congressman was saying there, we've got to do this right. And so and we know this, the Democrats know that they cannot win if we do it right. So this is the big battle we're in right now.
Yeah, and this is all's fair in love and war. This is part of politics, and this is a game that, if done correctly, can affect things. But now the Republicans are finally playing this game. They're realizing the ground game that needs to be affected in these states, and they're fighting back. And the real interesting point is, I want to show Louisiana's. So you see here on the map, it goes from District 6 is from Louisiana down to Baton Rouge. That's right through the heart of the state, and why that's challenging for a representative to actually represent those people is because the people in Louisiana, North Louisiana, and Shreveport are going to have different needs, different desires, different specifications of what they want voted for than, say, Baton Rouge. And then you're also throwing in looks like Natchitoches, different parishes there. Then you're going down to closer to Alexandria. Like, those are completely different communities that have different needs that need to be met and need to be spoken up for. And that would really be logistically almost nearly, if not certainly, impossible for a representative to be able to represent and vote accordingly for those many different parishes and sections of parishes within Louisiana, not even including the demographics there, just the local graphics of location of what their desired and their needs are, from bridges to roadworks to schools and other things of that nature, before you get off into the racial component of this. And so that ends that. And this is a prime example of what's happening in other states. And I had Florida up here. And obviously, it's a smaller map here, but things kind of even out to where the actual representation, and there's talk of the Florida one. This article from The Hill talks about how DeSantis is looking to sign this very, very soon. And the gentleman on the Newsmax clip was talking about how, Florida does things by the law. This looks like this will try to go push in forward. Alabama as well. Governor Kay there has talked about, hey, we're going to do this.
Tennessee is too. Yes.
Tennessee is too. So there's a lot of people, and Louisiana is kind of leading the way. And I think Governor Landry doing that is helpful to show that, hey, this can be done, because there's talks, polls that are showing that Republicans, depending on who's left Congress, the runoffs that are going to be needed through the primaries of those coming in, the new maps that were there before, that they were going to lose upwards of 26 seats. Daily Wire and others are reporting that if this goes into effect, you're possibly talking about almost a 40 to 50 seat swing, where Republicans are 18, 20 seats in the lead now, depending on what polls you're talking to. So this is a major shift, and if this goes into effect, and if states are able to actually change the maps before and again, this is before the midterms. There's plenty of time. And last week we talked about this, and we prayed about this, about how the Supreme Court, under overturning Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs decision, kind of slow walked this. And it was interesting that the conversation came out about this, and that this happened almost immediately the next day, and this overturning, and that prevented that from happening, because if they would have delayed the question was, even before the 2020 and 2024 election, when you have these debates all the time, there's not enough time. Well, this is a chance for the entire nation to show this is plenty of time. The Supreme Court needs to rule early on. They don't need to wait, because per James Carville, if Democrats get in office, they're going to pack the court. Yes. They're going to just go totalitarian, and they're not going to do things that are constitutional. Then you're going to have to fight them out in court. So this is what you're up against. And I think it's very effective. And the prayers need to be for not only look, this isn't about party lines. This is about doing one, what is constitutional in the law's eyes, but then two, we want to pray for those people who are going to have to go through this, because these are your local people who, whether it be at the state level, at the county level or parish level here in Louisiana, your cities, and even in rural areas, they're going to have to redo not only the maps, but they're also have to redo ballots. And you're talking about campaigns, figuring out where money needs to go. There's a lot of logistics that are out there. So, and pray that voters are informed as well through this, and then they can get this done to show, one, the Supreme Court that, hey, if you rule early enough, now give us a 5-6 month window, the states can get this done very easily. And hopefully states can work with each other to figure out, how to best do this and go back and forth.
And I think for us, as Mike Johnson obviously is our friend, and we're believing God has him in that position prophetically. We have that. Matter of fact, tomorrow night on Clay Nash's prayer call, I'm going to be on there with a video on the video stream on YouTube and Facebook with him. We're going to talk about this topic. You can go to claynash.org and get all the information for that tomorrow night at 8 Central. But in the midst of this, what we're fighting for is all across the land. So there's tit for tat. Now, from what I understand, the Supreme Court has ruled in Texas that is not going to change. Those seats are going to flip. You're going to lose two big, Crockett and Green, the two African-American congressmen and women who really are probably, she probably is the most incompetent one there is in America. She'll lose her district. So will he, because of this, the way they've divided that. California, they're going to allow it to stand. Now, this is really sad because it wasn't really a racial gerrymandering. It was a Democrat gerrymandering, which I don't know if that can be addressed in the Supreme Court system, where you're marking it based on that rather than race. Okay, so it's unconstitutional for race. Is it wrong to do it that way? The Supreme Court so far has allowed that to go on. So that's inevitable. So what we're trying to do is we're going to take losses, and those in California for sure, and some other states, but can we overcome it in this shift that we're seeing? I think this could be the hand of God coming and giving us a chance. If you want to pray for anything, pray for this, pray for election reform. The sentiment is very clear in America. The recent study that was done by Barnum and others that we shared last year, I think it was, the sentiment of America, it has moved to the right, and the foundation, the grassroots, is we don't agree with the ideology politics that are out there right now. But the problem is it's not translating to the polls because of the way the Democrats ballot harvest and all the different ways that they get votes in. In America, it's supposed to be one person, one vote. That's not true anymore. You can have one person 1,000 votes, one person 10 votes, because they're gathering ballots and they're bringing them in, and they're not always being done properly. Some of these people, and I know this because I was at a Democratic campaign meeting, they will fill out the ballot for the person. Maybe they're old, maybe they're in a nursing home, maybe they don't care, and well, I'll fill it out for you. Okay, just sign here. So you got these people harvesting ballots and taking. It's legal in some states, most states, I think it is now, and they're doing this. So it's not, it's not one person, one vote. So therefore, we need reform. Now, President Trump asked Speaker Mike Johnson recently to pass legislation on this issue, and Mike said this. I heard him say this. He said, "Mr. President, we already did," and he said the Senate won't pass it. And then President Trump says, "Well, do it again." So Mike's doing it again. He's done it again, where they passed more legislation, but it still is dying in the Senate. And this is a major problem. We've got to pray that the Senate would do right by America. Now, there's not much you can do on a state level or a local level in these elections, because the state's attorney general and the way they vote there control that. But there's got to be a way to deal with this on a federal level, on federal elections, and that's what we need transformation in.
Yeah, and so the challenge will be is can these states get this done and redraw these maps before the midterms that can really determine the success of the final 2 years of Trump's presidency, and then lead things into 2028, which can be in and of effect challenging because of the Iran issue. And so we want to kind of segue into that because there's now new reports coming out as of this morning that Iran has submitted a new proposal. And so I want to talk about this a little bit, and here's a report from the Daily Hill, or The Hill, talking about the recent report that just came in a couple of hours ago from Iran and where things stand on this.
With a new proposal, but they say the clock is not indefinite, giving the Pentagon a deadline for the U.S. naval blockade, though not publishing it publicly, but also saying that they believe they have the United States in a tight position, and the president will either have to make a deal that he may not like or proceed forward with a war less than ideal terms. But the White House believes that they have the leverage here, with the president saying the latest proposal that he has seen from Iran is not one at his juncture that is suitable to what the White House is looking for. When asked what his next steps might be, this is what he said.
We start military strikes on targets.
Well, I don't want to say that. I mean, I can't tell that to a reporter. If they misbehave, if they do something bad, but right now, we'll see. But, you know, it's a possibility that could happen, certainly.
For the time being, the United States is continuing to use the U.S. naval blockade as its main point of economic leverage against Iran. 48 ships have been turned around, according to Central Command, with several ships being boarded both here in the Middle East as well as in the Indo-Pacific. Iran lashing back at these maneuvers today, saying the president of the United States has openly described the unlawful seizure of Iranian vessels as piracy, brazenly boasting that we act like pirates. This was no verbal slip. It was a direct and damning admission of the criminal nature of their actions against international maritime navigation. The international community, UN member states, and the UN Secretary General must firmly reject any normalization of such blatant violations of international law. As the president weighs his options and the latest proposal put on the table by Iran, both Washington and Tehran say they're ready to go militarily in case these negotiations fall through.
And what's interesting on this is this talk of breaking international law is Iran would have done the same thing by putting on the blockade. That's very well known. International maritime law experts have said the same thing. So they're accusing President Trump of the very thing that they're doing. And this goes back to last week. We talked about is figuring out, and this is why Trump and the Trump administration have kind of stalled, is because they're trying to figure out who's actually in charge.
Right.
Is it the military? Is it the Ayatollahs? Is it the IRGC? Is it the elected officials? And they're all four different, and they're all fighting against each other because they're trying to figure out who's going to rule at the end of the day and how this is going to affect anything.
Let me add this. Also, it just came out, just popped up on the news brief here. We just sunk 6 of the small boats that have been attacking people in the Strait of Hormuz, the Iranians. So those were just sunk by our military. This is a little bit of insight from Besset on what's going on.
Yeah, so let's level set here. I think the Iranians are starting to believe their own propaganda. And just to be clear, the leadership is hunkered down in bunkers all over the country. And I don't think they know what's going on. But what is going on is that they're reduced. Their navy is not a navy anymore. It's a band of pirates. They are trying to cut off international freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, and the U.S. is opening that up. This is a humanitarian effort. I can tell you, 2 weeks ago was IMF World Bank Week in Washington, and I had numerous countries come up to me, some of the poorest, some of the most vulnerable, and ask us to do this because it's not only energy that's in there, it's fertilizer, it's food transport, it's LPG for the more than the billion plus people in India use to cook. So we are saying the Iranians do not have control of the strait. We have absolute control of the strait. We have blockaded the ships going into or out of Iranian ports. Their economy is in free fall. And everyone says they have the high tolerance for pain. Well, their soldiers will not have a high tolerance for not getting paid.
And I think there's the statement. I think that's the most powerful statement because they will not have a high tolerance for that. They got to pay. They have bills that they want to pay for their family.
Yeah.
I think that's some of the issues.
Yep. And I want to go back a day because he said this yesterday on the Sunday mornings with Maria Bartiromo, because President Trump has told him basically put on economic sanctions, and they're calling it economic fury. They've done this before, it's what kind of started things, but they're adding on more pressure now, which is why Iran is acting in a certain way. Oh, let me go back to this.
You still looking to apply secondary sanctions or sanctions on Iran or those doing business with Iran?
Yeah, and Maria, just to remind you and your viewers, this began with the order last March from President Trump on max pressure, and 3 weeks ago, the president gave the order to Treasury, myself, to begin economic fury. And the way to think about that, we were running a marathon over the past 12 months, and now we are sprinting towards the finish line. And I can tell you that we are suffocating the regime, and they are not able to pay their soldiers. This is a real economic blockade, and it is in all parts of government, all hands on deck. It is the blockade that our great Navy is doing. No ships are getting through, and we have upped the pressure on anyone trying to remit money into Iran to help the IRGC. You know, they are a corrupt institution. They've been stealing from the Iranian people for years. They have money offshore. We've tracked that down. We will continue to track that down. And we're going to preserve those assets for the Iranian people on the other side of this conflict.
And I think that's key. This isn't just about letting Iran and the nation crumble just to crumble for crumbling's sake and power's sake. It's to give the people, the Persian people of Iran, back their nation and give them freedoms that they've lost through the 47-year reign of the Ayatollah. And this is what the Persian people, the Iranian people around the world in Iran, they're crying out for. And into this totalitarianism and into this pressure that previous generations went into somewhat blindly from their perspective. So you're seeing the pressure being put on. And last week there are reports, confirmed reports, that the UAE, and this is important because this leads into why, with your video, what you said of why Iran or why the U.S. attacked Iran was because last week the UAE left OPEC, the oil cartel, and so this is starting to fall apart. So now they're more than likely going to start producing more oil, which will bring more supply into the market, which will bring prices down eventually. The thought is that it'll take a few months, just as it'll take a few months for the U.S. to ramp up. But other countries might also look at this. And because last week the UAE made this decision, Iran sent out missiles, drone attacks earlier today.
Yep.
And 4 of them were fired, 3 of them were intercepted, and 1 landed in the sea. So this is why the U.S. went in and attacked the vessels that are in or around Iran, their military, what is remaining of their navy there, to combat this. Okay, if you're going to do this, and we're in quote unquote a ceasefire, which you could say, okay, they're breaking this, so the U.S. is saying, okay, we're going to take this out, and then we'll go back to the ceasefire. There are reports that they're through the Witkoff and those who are negotiating in these nations for the Trump administration, that there has been an ally for putting more pressure on Iran, get involved into these negotiations. So Witkoff and Jared Kushner will have less of an impact. And supposedly Trump's sending them in to see if there is even a possibility of a deal. So he's sending this new gentleman in to basically start applying pressure. He's a Iranian expert. He understands, hey, this is kind of the action you need to start taking, because he understands who these people are. And if Witkoff and Kushner are saying, hey, there's no deal, which is pretty much what we're seeing from them, then Trump knows what he's dealing with, and he's really trying to give Iran and the Persian government and the Iranian government more so the ability to kind of come to it. We talked about this example. Victor got it from Victor Davis Hanson, where he talked about it as like, look, when you come out of World War II, Germany kind of had to figure things out, and it took them a while, and it took a couple decades for them to kind of get everything together. That's why you had U.S. forces, Allied forces versus the Russian forces split East-West Germany. So this will take a while for them to figure out, as the same thing we're seeing in Venezuela. And this leads into the point that that the administration doesn't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. And I want to play this. This is from John Fetterman. This is his thoughts of the Democrat perspective on whether Iran should or should not have nuclear weapons.
I want to start with the newest thing. President Trump spent part of last night leafing through some new Iran peace plan. He says, I will soon be reviewing the plan that Iran has just sent to us, but can't imagine that it would be acceptable and that they have not yet paid a big enough price for what they've done to humanity and the world over the last 47 years. What do you think, Senator Fetterman? Has Iran paid a big enough price yet?
Well, I mean, I just watched that clip that you brought me into here, and every single Democrat would have clapped for that too. It wasn't that long ago. Every single Democrat says we can't let those lunatics, have a nuclear bomb. That's not a shocking view for a Democrat, but I've become the only Democrat in the entire Congress that have supported Epic Fury. There is a truth. It's a truth. Iran can't ever have a nuclear bomb. Another truth is they were committed to building one, and they were close to actually achieving that goal. I think it was entirely the right thing, just like Midnight Hammer a year ago. And here we are right now. No, Iran hasn't paid an appropriate price, because the price, for me, is denying them nuclear ambitions and also making sure they don't have the kind of missiles that could reach Europe or American assets in the region now too. We agree. We can't let Iran have those kinds of capabilities. And that's here we are. We're at the cusp. And that's why I'm the only Democrat that says that's entirely appropriate.
Speak to that.
Yeah, that's it. And I watched him the other day as well. They asked him, would he become a Republican? He said no, he's not going to in the upcoming election. Next 28, he'll be up for re-election in Pennsylvania. But I think you need to have light in a dark place. So I don't mind him being a Democrat that way. We pray for him. I think God is using him in a special way to be a reasonable voice there and actually say that's where we should be. Now, I think this is a whole thing that they cannot in any way have this. And I prophesied this, or I shared this, I think it was on Clay Nash's call. The Lord spoke to me out of when Jesus said that wisdom will be proven in your deeds or in your children. And we're watching President Trump make these decisions. It's very important that we wait until the birthing of what he's doing, the deeds, before we say it's not wisdom. Because right now the narrative, the left is celebrating that they think Iran is winning. They're celebrating that. And that is what he's speaking to. And I think there's others that are as well. But this is where they want Iran to win, not because they love America, because they hate Trump. And we've got to pray for him. Let me play a clip from Jonathan Cahn, a prophetic word he had about President Trump. And he shares where we are now. It just popped up on my feed today, but I think it's important.
Now, I was with Donald Trump when he was running for re-election 8 days before the election that would return him to the White House. And I was led to give him a prophetic word that I spoke publicly. It's on YouTube. You can see it somewhere. It might say Jonathan Cahn's word or prophetic word to Trump. But here is just a little clip from that word that I gave to Trump, which is of significance for what just happened. Here it is.
It will be the last act and maybe America's last chance of redemption. But for that to happen, you must seek him with all your heart. Follow him with all your might. Jehu was born to make his nation great again by turning it back to God. So were you. America can only be great again if America turns back to God. You are a trumpet of God, and the trumpet can only fulfill its purpose if it's filled with the breath of the one who holds it up and blows through it. God is the one who lifted you up, and he wills that you be filled with the breath of his Spirit. God is calling you to go all out for God, for him, and if you do, then what follows will be the greatest and most glorious part. Then you will do what no president has ever done. You will be the vessel God used to bring America back to touch history and to change the world.
That was a call and a charge to Donald Trump that I was led to give him before the election, that for God to lift him up, the only way he could make America great again, it would be for this reason, that he be lifted up again, would be to lead America back to God, who made America great in the first place. You can't make America great without the God who made America great in the first place. That is the ultimate highest call for Donald Trump, if he would move in that direction. But see, if he would move in that direction, the forces of the dark side will try to stop him, eliminate him, assassinate him, just as they tried before he was reelected, to stop him right there. Now that happened now, and we know everything he did. He's rolled back that agenda so far. It's been rolled back. But so what could be happening that the dark side would be trying to stop now? The president just announced, listen, that he is ordaining a day, calling for a day in May 17th, as a national day to rededicate America to God. May 17th. So we would expect the enemy to seek to stop him. Stop that, eliminate him, assassinate him, just like as with Charlie Kirk, just as when Trump was running so we could stop him from being elected. But now it's a whole nother level. This is what I was led to speak to him, that this is the real purpose. And by the way, that consecration of the priesthood, that's not about politics. It's about calling a nation back to God. So this is the ultimate end game. Now,
that is the ultimate end game. That's what I wanted you to hear. And I think that as we have the National Day, we have the National Day of Prayer this week on the 7th, but this is a day of prayer that he set aside, like presidents have done in the past. I think Abraham Lincoln did, to pray for our nation. And that is part of what Jonathan is saying there. These assassination attempts are tied to that prophetically because of what the call of his life is right now. So when we see this, we know we're taking flack because we're over the target here. We've got to stand and cover him, protect him in our prayers. Not that we're not just this Trump cheering team. We want our nation to be back to the foundations of what God made them to be. And he is a Jehu for this hour. He must remove this Jezebel spirit that has ruled this nation long enough. And we have to see this transformation. And I believe that's what this battle is about right now.
Yeah. And the reason we talk about the stories we talk about today is to focus on the fact that pressure is being ramped up on Trump to make certain decisions. And most presidents in their second term tend to coast at this point and towards the last 2 years of their presidency. And so the reason we want to pray for him and this administration is as they lead into the midterms, that they stay focused on this agenda of helping America get back to making God the focus. And many presidents, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, other presidents would consistently, especially early on, call random days of prayer for certain reasons. And so it's interesting to see that he's doing this and playing this out and walking this out. And so as we lead into the midterms and lean in closer, now with the congressional maps having to be redrawn, it has to be done according to proper constitutional authority and played out properly. And so we just want to keep praying and, again, touching base here on these points of for those who are having to actually do the work now moving forward. And then most importantly, federally, nationally, for the Trump administration as they lean in, because you have moderates and, you know, the new Republican side who's just gone crazy and putting pressure on Trump on this Iran deal because they don't like it for whatever reason. And they're just moderates who are isolationists, and that's fine. They can have their opinion. They can do it. But it's whether President Trump bows to that pressure. And this is where we would hope that he would have a listening ear to the Lord to what decision to make through this. And, you know, he hasn't been perfect through it all. You know, the Ben Shapiro, good Trump, bad Trump. Which one will we get today? It comes up and it is constant in my prayers for him. And so that's what we want to pray for, is that, you know, he have good Trump be the Trump that listens to the Lord through this on what decisions to make. And as we navigate through this, and hopefully the American people can see, like you're talking about, the test of time, of seeing the fruits of the decisions that are being made for the long term, because what he's doing, if you agree with what he's doing, you understand what he's doing, will give a balance of power to freedom, not just to, say, America or the West, but more so to the ideas of freedom. Because if Iran were able to have that nuclear weapon, what they would have done with it, like Fetterman talked about, would have been very damaging. And so the effects that President Trump and the U.S. military and Israeli Air Force and IDF have put on Iran have pushed back that timeline decades, if not upwards of 100 years, they believe. Whether that's true or not will be the test. And so we just want to pray that through this, as the pressure ramps up for midterms, for those who want to end this conflict, that he would be able to navigate this, and for those local and state officials who now with the new maps possibly be redrawn, possibly somebody who might have won a certain election may not win an election because of voter turnout, et cetera, things like that. This could be a blessing in disguise through all of it.
And as we close out today, we didn't talk about this, but the May Day protest that happened last Friday all across America by the left, communists, socialists came out burning American flags, anti-American sentiment everywhere. They want to destroy all billionaires. By the way, $2 billion was given to that movement by billionaires. Kind of the hypocrisy is overwhelming. This is why we pray, and I believe this with all my heart. We did this Sunday morning in our prayer time. Those were Americans that were out there desecrating the flag, desecrating America, speaking against our foundations. They're Americans. We have a right to repent for what they did, because we are Americans as well. Tomorrow, if you listen to my podcast, I've already recorded it for tomorrow. I had a dream about the past affecting the future and how we can go back and deal with that, so that what happened Friday and those events that have happened the last few years that have desecrated what God is trying to do in this nation, we can cover that in prayer. It's a Daniel 9 moment where we can cover that in prayer and deal with this issue and move forward to what the Lord has for us. There is a way to fight this battle. It can't be that we just sit here on this pipeline and tell you all the bad things and all the negative things. We're not doing that. We're telling you hope. We're giving you hope and telling you how to navigate through this. And the navigation is this: we can repent, cry out, and ask for justice in our land. Pray for election reform. Pray for fraud to be revealed should it occur, or if it is occurring. That's my cry today. So I'm going to check out, let Zach close for us, but I want you to be in agreement with us that we will pray accordingly, and that President Trump would be the Jehu that God's called him to be, just like Jonathan Kahn said there, that we can see this battle and pray for his protection. So thank you, Zach. Thanks for everybody listening today. God bless you.
All right, yes. Thank you all. Continue to pray, continue to stay on the wall, praying for your local officials and local constituents and your neighbors around you as they navigate through this. You know, you're listening to us and maybe listening to a few other people to try to stay informed, but there are some people who don't, and maybe don't vote, maybe won't vote, want to stay out of politics altogether. But as Americans, we have been given the ability to vote, and we believe Americans should take that chance and voice their opinion and let their voice be heard if they have that ability to vote and capability. So continue to pray. We'll be back next week. I will, at least as Pastor Tim heads off to Japan. We're going to continue to stay up on the news, continue to pray through everything as we navigate these wavy waters leading up to the midterm. So blessings to each and every one of you. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and if you want to give, go to our website and give under the Pipeline Report. So blessings, and we'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.